UFC 280 made a huge statement on Saturday night. Should the UFC still trust TJ Dillashaw after the injury fiasco? Could the winner of Volkanovski versus Makhachev be the pound-for-pound number one? Then we discuss the controversial robbery of Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley at UFC 280. Here's all of the latest MMA news right here on MMA Quick Takes. TJ Dillashaw's stock was high with Dana White before UFC 280. However, it's doubtful that Dana White still felt the same after what he found out about TJ Dillashaw following the UFC 280 fight with Aljamain Sterling. In the lead-up of UFC 280, White sang praises of TJ Dillashaw. He said that he thought TJ Dillashaw handled his USADA suspension for performance-enhancing drugs better than most would. But that was before Dana White found out that TJ Dillashaw was coming into the fight with Aljamain Sterling with a shoulder injury. Pre-existing, I might add. Dillashaw apparently suffered a dislocated left shoulder in the early moments of the bout with Aljamain Sterling. He made it to his corner after the first round and his team was able to put it back into place. Both the cage side physician and referee Mark Goddard didn't see any issue with it and allowed him to continue fighting. He absorbed 68 more strikes from Aljamain Sterling before referee Mark Goddard waved off the entire fight. After his loss, Dillashaw got on the mic with Daniel Cormier in the post-fight interview, and he revealed some details that probably didn't sit very well with Dana White. He told the audience, quote, "I've got to apologize to the weight class. I kinda held it up. I completely blew my shoulder out at the end of April as soon as I started getting ready for this, and probably dislocated a good 20 times during training camp." So the earliest that we heard about the possible fight between Dillashaw and Sterling was mid-June. That means Dillashaw already accepted the fight with a blown-out shoulder. Even when the contest got pushed from UFC 279 to UFC 280, he still kept up the appearance that he was going to be able to put on a title fight-worthy performance. Dana White said that neither he, the UFC, or the UAE Mixed Martial Arts Federation knew about Dillashaw's injury before going into this fight. Dana White was completely fooled by TJ Dillashaw. He said that he looked good and he looked fight-ready. This begs the question on whether or not the UFC and Dana White in particular are still going to be able to have trust in TJ Dillashaw leading into future events. The fact that he did not have a realistic chance of being competitive in this fight and still chose to go into it anyways is a telltale sign that TJ Dillashaw does not consider those around him nor the organization, but only what he can get out of it. This is really unfortunate because I actually was a big fan of TJ Dillashaw. For some reason, I still have this loyalty to him, and I was hoping that he was going to be able to come back and show people that he's got what it takes. That being said, he really proved me wrong here, and I'm extremely disappointed. I hope TJ Dillashaw can get his shit together. After what we saw Sterling do to him in this past fight, I'm not too convinced we're going to see much more of him. But if we do, hopefully we can see a redeemed version of him. After Islam Makhachev met up with Alexander Volkanovski face-to-face inside the cage after his UFC 280 performance against Charles Oliveira, I couldn't imagine a better fight to watch next. Now, Alexander Volkanovski already owns the spot at number one pound for pound. Now, if Volkanovski wins, he becomes a two-division champ, and that really solidifies his position where he is right now and kind of trumps anyone below him. Now, I read that Brett Okamoto actually brought up a really good point. Israel Adesanya is fighting in November, and the result of that could have a big impact on this discussion. If Adesanya wins against Alex Pereira, he'll have 13 straight UFC middleweight wins and 6 successful title defenses. And the only fight that he's ever lost in his career was outside of his own division. Regardless, I think it would be very interesting to see Islam Makhachev take the pound-for-pound spot. I have a lot of respect for him after what I saw on Saturday night, and I think that where he is now is extremely well-deserved. Now for the big conversation that everyone is talking about. We all know that where Sean O'Malley goes, controversy is sure to follow. O'Malley scored the biggest win of his career on Saturday night, edging out a split decision over Petr Yan. This means that Sean O'Malley is now perfectly lined up to face Aljamain Sterling for the championship belt. But based on reactions to Sean O'Malley's win all over the internet, the UFC is going to have to tread very lightly on this one. In the first round, both fighters came out throwing speedy kicks. O'Malley was able to clip Yan multiple times. Yan wasn't having much success with head strikes, but his kicking game was superb and continually targeted the leg of O'Malley. The first takedown attempt came from Petr Yan, and O'Malley ended the round with a takedown attempt that Yan escaped. Stats-wise, I still gave round 1 to O'Malley, even though it seemed like Yan was the bigger aggressor. Yan opened round 2 with a low kick to body kick combination. He seized the opportunity to get a takedown first, and O'Malley had to work twice as hard to get the fight back to the feet. Then O'Malley tried a trip of his own, but he ended up eating a counter for it. I think it was pretty easy for everybody to say that Yan won the second round. The third round is where it gets a little bit tricky. It was incredibly close going into the third, and I'm sure that some people could even argue that Yan won the first. They both went into the third round assuming they had to give everything they had in order to win the fight. Yan got cut open by a nasty knee by Sean O'Malley. They both went back and forth, trading shots, attempting takedowns. Yan went to his wrestling in the final 2 minutes of the round. O'Malley was able to regain position. The round ended with a takedown of O'Malley and Yan dropping a nice hammer fist. Ben Cartilage scored the fight 29-28 O'Malley. David Letheby, 29-28 O'Malley. Vito Polillo, 29-28 Yan. The first round, all three judges had the scorecards in favor of Yan. The second round, all three judges had the scorecards in favor of O'Malley. But in the third round, 2 judges had it in favor of O'Malley, and 1 judge had it in favor of Yan. If you believe that this fight was a robbery, definitely don't use the stats as a leg to stand on. O'Malley had an 84-58 advantage in significant strikes alone. Yan won both body strikes and leg strikes, and neither fighter was credited with a knockdown. Yan scored 6 successful takedowns, with at least 1 in each round. He logged 5 minutes and 44 seconds of control time and landed 6 total ground strikes. Let me just give my opinion here. I rewatched the fight again today. I'm still gonna have to go in favor of Yan for this one. The thing that stood out to me most in this entire thing, after the fight, Daniel Cormier asked Sean O'Malley a question. He said, "Do you think you did enough to win this fight?" And Sean O'Malley's response was, "I don't know." That tells me that even Sean O'Malley wasn't convinced in his own performance. Based on the reaction of MMA fans, let alone fighters, I'm gonna have to side with the fact that Petr Yan was robbed of this opportunity. Let me know what you guys think in the chat. I'm very excited to discuss this with you guys. I know that this is a huge controversy and something that a lot of people are talking about right now. Do you think Petr Yan was robbed at UFC 280? Also, let me know what you think about whether or not the winner of Volkanovski versus Makhachev is going to be the #1 pound for pound. And should the UFC trust TJ Dillashaw again? I'm excited to hear what you guys think in the comment section below. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can catch up on all of our live streams and uploads. This is your latest UFC 280 news right here on MMA Quick Takes.